Hello my friends. Lesson 6. Albert Einstein is one of the most famous scientists in human history, but his life story is not only about science. It is also about curiosity, persistence, imagination, and the courage to think differently. For English learners, his biography is a wonderful example of how a simple idea can change the world. In this first part, we will explore Einstein's childhood, his early interests, and the events that shaped his young mind. Albert Einstein was born on March 14, 1879, in the city of Ulm in Germany. His family was not rich, but they were warm, supportive, and full of love. His father, Hermann Einstein, ran a small business that produced electrical equipment. His mother, Pauline, loved music and was a talented pianist. She wanted her children to appreciate art and creativity. Albert also had a younger sister named Maja, who was born 2 years after him. The two siblings were very close, and Albert cared deeply about her throughout his life. Interestingly, Einstein did not speak until he was about 3 years old. Some people around his family worried that something was wrong with him, but his parents stayed patient, observing that he spent a lot of time quietly watching the world. When he finally began to speak, he surprised everyone with the complexity of his questions. He would ask, "How does this work?" or "Why does this happen?" Again and again, he showed a deep desire to understand the rules behind everyday things. When Albert was 5, something happened that changed his life forever. His father showed him a simple compass. The young boy was fascinated. Why did the needle always point in the same direction? Why did it move even though nothing touched it? Albert later said that this compass made him realize that there must be something hidden behind things, something deeply mysterious. This small moment planted the seed of his lifelong love for science. School, however, was not always easy for Einstein. The German education system at the time was strict and harsh. Teachers expected students to follow rules without asking questions. But Einstein was different. He wanted to understand ideas, not just memorize them. He preferred thinking on his own instead of repeating what the teacher said. Because of this, some teachers thought he was lazy or even rebellious. One of them famously told him, "You will never amount to anything." This, of course, turned out to be completely wrong. Despite these school problems, Albert was an excellent student in subjects he loved, especially mathematics and physics. When he was around 12, he discovered a geometry book that amazed him. He studied it with great enthusiasm and soon knew more advanced math than many older students. He would solve complex problems just for fun. His uncle Jacob, who was an engineer, often gave Albert scientific books and puzzles to challenge him. These early influences helped Einstein build a strong foundation for his future discoveries. When Einstein was a teenager, his family faced financial problems. Hermann's business was not doing well, so the family moved from Germany to Italy to look for better opportunities. Albert was left behind temporarily to finish school, but he was deeply unhappy. He felt trapped by strict teachers and uninspiring lessons. Eventually, he left school without a formal diploma and joined his family in Italy. However, Einstein did not give up on education. Instead, he applied to the Swiss Federal Polytechnic School in Zurich, one of the best science schools in Europe. Getting into the school was not easy. Einstein did well in math and physics on the entrance exam, but he was weak in other subjects. The school rejected him but suggested he finish one more year of education in Switzerland. He agreed, studied hard, and finally passed. In 1896, at the age of 17, Albert Einstein officially became a student at the Polytechnic. Studying in Zurich was an important turning point in his life. The city was more open-minded than Germany, and the school allowed students to think creatively. Einstein enjoyed this environment very much. He spent hours reading scientific books outside of class, sometimes skipping lessons to work on problems he found more interesting. His passion for physics grew stronger every year. During his time at the Polytechnic, Einstein met many friends who would later become important figures in his life. One of them was Mileva Marić, a brilliant Serbian student who was also studying physics. Einstein admired her intelligence and determination. They spent many evenings discussing science, theories, and mathematics. Their connection eventually developed into a romantic relationship, and Mileva played an important role in Einstein's early scientific work. Another important mentor was Professor Heinrich Weber, although Einstein often disagreed with him. Weber preferred traditional theories and was not open to new ideas. Einstein, on the other hand, wanted to explore fresh ideas about light, energy, and the nature of the universe. Even though their relationship was difficult, these disagreements helped Einstein develop his own independent way of thinking. By the time Einstein graduated in 1900, he was full of ideas but struggled to find a job. Many professors described him as talented but too free-thinking, and he did not receive the recommendations he needed. For almost 2 years, he looked for work, feeling frustrated and discouraged. But this difficult period eventually led to one of the most interesting chapters in his life, his job at the Swiss Patent Office. This is where the next part of the story begins, the part where Einstein transforms from a young dreamer into a revolutionary scientist who changes the world. Einstein's life changed dramatically when he finally found a steady job at the Swiss Patent Office in the city of Bern. The job itself had nothing to do with physics. He spent his days reviewing applications for new inventions and checking whether people's ideas were truly original. But this position turned out to be perfect for Einstein. The work was stable, the schedule was predictable, and he had plenty of free time to think. In fact, Einstein later said that working at the patent office helped him develop the habit of analyzing ideas clearly and logically. In his small office, surrounded by papers and inventions, Einstein began writing scientific papers that he hoped would attract the attention of the scientific community. At night, after work, he would sit at his table, drink tea, and think deeply about the mysteries of the universe. He explored questions like, what is the true nature of light? How do objects move when they approach the speed of light? What is energy? How does time behave in extreme conditions? These were bold questions that most scientists of his time were too afraid to ask. The year 1905 became known as Einstein's miracle year, Annus Mirabilis, because he published 4 groundbreaking papers that changed the world of physics forever. These papers were written by a man who had no university position, no laboratory, and no academic title, only a sharp mind and a limitless imagination. The first paper explained the photoelectric effect, showing that light behaves not only like a wave but also like particles called quanta of energy. This idea became one of the foundations of quantum physics, a field that would transform science in the 20th century. Einstein's explanation was so revolutionary that it later earned him the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1921. The second paper discussed the motion of tiny particles floating in water, known as Brownian motion. His ideas confirmed the existence of atoms, which many scientists at the time still doubted. This paper helped solidify the atomic theory and changed how people understood matter. The third paper introduced the special theory of relativity, a theory that completely changed the understanding of time and space. Einstein argued that the laws of physics are the same for anyone moving at a constant speed, and that the speed of light is always the same, no matter how fast you are moving. This led to the astonishing conclusion that time itself can slow down and distances can shrink for objects moving at high speeds. These were ideas no one had imagined before. Finally, the fourth paper introduced the equation that has become one of the most famous in history: E equals mc squared. This equation means that mass and energy are connected. They are two forms of the same thing. A tiny amount of mass can produce an enormous amount of energy. This idea would later become extremely important in the development of nuclear power and, sadly, nuclear weapons. By the end of 1905, Einstein was no longer an unknown employee at the patent office. He was becoming one of the most important voices in modern physics. However, Fame did not come immediately. Many scientists still doubted his ideas, and Einstein himself remained modest and calm, continuing his daily routine at work. In 1909, Einstein finally received his first academic position as a professor at the University of Zurich. For the first time, he could devote himself entirely to science. He enjoyed teaching and often spoke passionately to his students, encouraging them to think independently. His lectures were not always perfectly organized, but they were filled with enthusiasm and creative energy. Students admired him for his ability to explain complex ideas in simple ways. Over the next few years, Einstein moved between several universities, from Zurich to Prague, then back to Zurich. Everywhere he went, his reputation grew. Scientists began to understand the power of his theories. He worked tirelessly on improving his ideas about relativity, searching for a way to combine motion, gravity, and light into one elegant theory. Finally, in 1915, after nearly 10 years of thinking, Einstein presented the general theory of relativity. This theory described gravity not as a force, but as a curve in space and time caused by mass. According to Einstein, planets move the way they do not because the sun pulls them with an invisible force, but because the sun bends space around it, and the planets followed the curved path. This was a radical idea that changed the foundations of physics and astronomy. Many scientists were shocked by Einstein's new theory. It seemed too strange and too advanced. But in 1919, something extraordinary happened. A British astronomer named Arthur Eddington traveled to observe a solar eclipse. According to Einstein's theory, the light from stars passing near the sun should bend because of the sun's gravity. After the eclipse, Eddington confirmed that Einstein was right. The news spread around the world. Einstein became an international celebrity almost overnight. Newspapers called him a genius and a revolutionary thinker. His face appeared on magazine covers, and he received invitations to speak in many countries. He traveled widely, giving lectures in Europe, Asia, and the United States. People filled large halls to hear him speak, even if they did not fully understand his theories. Yet Einstein remained humble and kind. He disliked the attention and preferred simple clothes, quiet walks, and conversations with close friends. Even as the world praised him, he stayed focused on science and on the values he cared about: peace, justice, and human rights. However, his rise to fame happened during a difficult time. World War I had shaken Europe, and political tensions were growing. Einstein, who strongly believed in peace, spoke out against nationalism and violence. His opinions were unpopular in some circles, and he received criticism from both politicians and scientists. Still, he never changed his principles. During the 1920s, Einstein continued developing his scientific ideas, searching for what he called a unified theory. He wanted to find a single set of rules that could explain all the forces in nature. Although he never fully succeeded, his efforts inspired generations of scientists. His personal life, however, became more complicated. His marriage with Mileva Maric began to suffer under the pressure of fame, scientific work, and emotional distance. They eventually divorced in 1919. Later that year, Einstein married his cousin, Elsa Löwenthal, who cared for him and managed many aspects of his public life. She helped him navigate the growing demands of being a world-famous scientist. As Europe moved closer to the rise of fascism, Einstein's position as a Jewish intellectual became dangerous. The next part of the story explores the challenges he faced, his escape from Germany, and his new life in the United States, a journey that shaped the final decades of his life. As the 1930s began, Albert Einstein found himself living in a world that was becoming increasingly dangerous. In Germany, the Nazi Party was rising to power. Their ideology included extreme nationalism, suppression of free thought, and violent anti-Semitism. Einstein, who is Jewish and openly critical of militarism, soon became a target for hate groups. His scientific theories were attacked in newspapers, his books were burned, and his name appeared on lists of enemies of the German nation. Because of this growing hostility, Einstein realized that staying in Germany was no longer safe. In 1933, while Einstein was traveling in the United States, Adolf Hitler officially came to power. Einstein immediately made the difficult decision not to return to Germany. Instead, he resigned from the Prussian Academy of Sciences and began looking for a new home. Many countries offered him positions, but Einstein chose the United States because he believed it provided freedom of thought and a safer environment for scientific research. Einstein accepted a position at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey, where he would spend the rest of his life. The institute gave him complete academic freedom. He did not have to teach classes or supervise students unless he wanted to. He was free to think, write, and explore scientific ideas without pressure. Einstein moved to Princeton with his wife, Elsa, who supported him during this transition. She, however, became ill shortly after their arrival and passed away in 1936. Her death deeply affected Einstein, but he continued his scientific work with quiet determination. Although Einstein lived in the United States, he remained concerned about the terrible events happening in Europe. As World War II approached, news spread that German scientists might be developing extremely powerful new weapons using nuclear energy. Einstein, who had discovered the relationship between mass and energy in his famous equation E=mc², understood the profound danger of such weapons. Although he strongly opposed violence, he believed the Allies needed to act quickly to prevent the Nazis from gaining such destructive power. At the suggestion of a group of physicists, Einstein signed a letter to U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1939. The letter warned that Germany might be working on an atomic bomb and recommended that the United States begin similar research. This letter helped launch the Manhattan Project, the secret program that eventually developed the first nuclear weapons. Einstein himself did not work on the project and later said he regretted signing the letter. He believed that nuclear weapons threatened the future of humanity and feared what they might do if used irresponsibly. After the war ended in 1945, Einstein dedicated much of his time to promoting peace and international cooperation. He became a strong supporter of global disarmament, warning that another world war could destroy civilization. He also supported civil rights, equality, and freedom of expression. Einstein admired peaceful leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and used his public influence to speak out against racism, segregation, and injustice in the United States. Einstein's home in Princeton became a place where people from around the world came to visit him. Some were scientists, others were political leaders, and many were simply ordinary people who admired his work. He often greeted visitors in his simple sweater, with his famously messy white hair and warm, thoughtful smile. Despite his fame, Einstein remained modest and humorous. He enjoyed sailing, playing the violin, and spending time with close friends. He often said that imagination and curiosity were more important than intelligence. Scientifically, Einstein continued working on what he called a unified field theory, a grand idea that aimed to bring all the forces of nature together into one elegant framework. Although he never achieved this goal, his work inspired generations of physicists who continued exploring these ideas long after his death. Modern research in quantum physics, cosmology, and string theory still reflects Einstein's influence. In his later years, Einstein became increasingly reflective about the meaning of life, the nature of human progress, and the responsibilities of scientists. He believed that science should serve humanity, not destroy it. He warned that without compassion and understanding, knowledge alone could become dangerous. His ethical ideas became just as famous as his scientific theories. On April 18, 1955, Albert Einstein passed away at the age of 76. Even on his final day, he was writing notes for a speech he planned to deliver in support of world peace. His death marked the end of a remarkable life, but his ideas continue to shape our understanding of the universe. Today, Einstein is remembered not only as the creator of the theory of relativity but also as a symbol of intellectual freedom, courage, and curiosity. Einstein's legacy lives on in countless ways, in the technology that uses relativity, in the scientific discoveries inspired by his theories, and in the belief that imagination can change the world. His life story reminds us that even the biggest breakthroughs often begin with simple questions and the willingness to wonder. For English learners, his biography is a perfect example of how one person's curiosity and passion can transform the world and inspire millions. Einstein once said, "The important thing is not to stop questioning." His life proved that this idea could lead to great things, not only in science but also in how we understand ourselves and the universe around us. And that is why Albert Einstein remains one of the most extraordinary figures in human history.